Chairperson, I want to thank the organizers for choosing Rwanda to host this particular conference, and particularly for our topic. If I can pick it from where Mrs. Mwinga left it, there is no better country to discuss human rights than Rwanda in Africa. There is no better country to discuss human rights in Rwanda. In 1998, I came from Sweden, where I was based, to Rwanda for the very first time to see what exactly happened during the 100 days of genocide in this country. The bones were still fresh at that time. Rwanda was not like this excellent whore that we are in. It was a completely destroyed country. And I always thought that what a pity that Africans would not make it a habit to come to Rwanda to see exactly what happens when human rights are disrespected. It's a classical case for all Africa to have been coming to Rwanda to learn what exactly happens when human rights are not respected. Not far from here, there is a small church that I was taken to, where I found bones and even clothes, shirts, dresses were still there. The corner of that small church where I stood at, I saw a book of a child, those books that you read children to send them to sleep. In English, I could read. Unfortunately, I do not read French. And I could visualize that this is a child. You could see the bones next, bones of a child. And next to the bones of the child, bones of an adult. Could visualize that when genocide broke out, this child must have been running, as we normally do, holding to the dress of the mother, not knowing what is going on, with the book, coming to church to seek sanctuary. And some evil person nevertheless came and killed that child and the other people in church. We couldn't understand it. After 1998, when later I transferred to the University of Pretoria, I was coming here every year bringing my students to visit genocide sites across Rwanda, just to show the students, who were students in human rights and democratization in Africa. These controversial terms in Africa, human rights, democratization, to see what happens when human rights are ignored. So we developed, like experts, like scholars, a hypothesis. And one hypothesis we came up with was, well, these people may have started killing each other probably because they are not educated. We sent out the students, go and investigate this. Maybe they did this, what they did, neighbors killing neighbors, maybe because of lack of education. We were wrong. Because the Minister of Justice at the time took us to a nearby prison here. And there we found all the genocide suspects, nearly 900,000. And indeed, some of them were professors, including a professor of economics. We found them. So we asked one professor, and what are you doing here? Well, me, yes. I also killed people. Why? Who are those people you killed? I killed the students, my students. You see? So the theory we came up with was destroyed. At the corner, there was a small group of women And we thought, as is always the case, maybe women have brought food to their husbands. The minister says, oh, I forgot, you want also to hear from women. Yes, women, come. Tell them, these are professors and students. Tell them, what happened? Why are you here? One woman came and said, I'm here because I killed my children. 7 children. The last one was very difficult to kill. I would hit with machete, and she doesn't die. We sleep. Tomorrow again, I start hitting. Why? Well, because they looked like Tutsis. One man said, me on this day I was tired, I just killed 70. 70. I was tired, I just killed 70. This is Africa's story. It's terrible. And you can see, we went after that, we went to Sierra Leone, where we find they were chopping hands. Even hands of a baby, chopping. So, why are you chopping the hands of these people? Oh, because if we don't chop the hands, they will vote for the government we don't want to be in power. So we have to chop the hands so that they cannot vote. Okay, what about the baby? The baby is going to grow because the parents of the baby belong to the government. It's going to grow and will vote for the government. We have to do that. This is the reality of Africa. It's terrible. Now, in order to respond to this, several efforts have been taken, of course, and one of those is the development of a framework for human rights. Sometimes it is argued that human rights are European, probably American. They are not. They are Europeans in this room. We can argue. I lived in Europe, in Sweden. I didn't see them. Human rights are actually African. They are African as much as they are European, as much as they are Asian. They are universal. They are global. We all need human rights. Why? Because human rights are inherent entitlements in each one of us. Dignity, opinion, free speech, assembly, association, even go beyond. And now I introduce you to our own framework, the African framework on human rights. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights is the main framework you should be using whenever you are stuck in trying to ventilate your human rights, because it is the only comprehensive instrument globally which guarantees not only those I've mentioned, the so-called idealistic rights, but also materialistic rights. Who looked after you yesterday in terms of housing? You see, your house was already taken care of by the organizers. Housing, education, employment, access to clean water. So the materialistic rights are also guaranteed in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights that the African Union adopted way back in 1981, which all the 55 African states, without exception, have ratified. And therefore, we've been given an opportunity in the event any of your human rights has been violated for you to send a complaint to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights regarding the situation in which you are, which is based in Banjul, the Gambia. You do not have to worry about the name or the address. You'll find them in my paper. I promised you 2 papers. So you complain against the state. Why? Because the state is the main duty bearer to your human rights. The state is also likely to be the main violator of your human rights. Usually it's the state and society. For lack of time, can I also emphasize that women in this room know they do not have to be told by me. I can only share with you from the little I learned from my mother that until now, you have not been regarded as equals to other human beings. No, very few people would like to listen to a woman. However educated a woman would be, still remains a woman. If you look at our societies, especially patriarchal societies, the status of woman is nothing to talk about. So in 2003, the African Union addressed that issue, introduced a specific protocol on women's rights in Africa, which is to add to the African Charter specifically on issues around women, so that women can also be treated as equals. Issues around child marriage. We still have situations in Africa where children are actually brides. Instead of being in school, they are actually looking after homes. 9-year-old, 12-year-old. Oh no, it must stop. So we have the African Charter on the rights and welfare of the child, also an instrument developed within the African Union. So we have developed a very important structure which is designed to assist us to try and ensure our human rights, whether we are children, whether we are women, whether we are poor, whether we are persons with disability, we are minorities, and so on and so forth. I want to conclude by saying that since we introduced this system, a number of Africans have sent their complaints to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and decisions have been made, a number of them finding various state parties to have been in breach of the African Charter. However, many non-governmental organizations felt that we should not end at simply the commission. When you are talking about rights, you need a court, and I want to conclude on that. So in addition to the African Commission of 11 commissioners from around Africa, we have now introduced an African Court of Human and People's Rights. Not far from here in Arusha, the African Court is not universally ratified by all the 55 African states. Only 28 have ratified it. And out of the 28, only 8 have agreed to send a declaration to the African Commission to say that we have nothing to fear. Any of our citizens who feel they should go and complain to the African Court can do so. Only 8. I want to conclude by saying the 8 used to be 9. You know, I began by talking about Rwanda, alluringly, in very good words. I want to conclude by now talking about Rwanda, not so good words. So Rwanda was the 9th. Rwanda has since withdrawn the declaration. Maybe we can criticize Rwanda, but what about the other states that have not even bothered to ratify the protocol establishing the African Court, so as to give us a wide avenue to go to the commission in Banjul or to go to the African Court in Arusha in the event we have situations? What are all these states trying to do? What are they still doing? So I want to conclude by giving you an assignment, as lecturers always do. When you have time tonight, please, the internet is free in our hotels. Try to take advantage of the free internet to access the African Commission website and also access the African Court on Human and People's Rights website and go to the window which provides for state parties to the protocol establishing the African Court and point out your state. Mrs. Mwinga, I can help you. Zambia is not yet a party to the protocol establishing the African Court. Let's go home and find out why. Zambia is still deciding to accede to the African Court Protocol. Rwanda has acceded, so Rwandans, our hosts, the assignment is, when are you going to rescind the declaration that you rescinded and return back to the African Court, so that you complete the process? You are a country in tears. Look at how Rwanda looks at now, the cleanest African country. Isn't it nice? Look at how nice it is. So I want to, in conclusion, to say also we should say the cleanest African country in terms of human rights, democracy, and good governance. Thank you.